Ladies and gentlemen at home, allow me to introduce to you my completely original OC character for One Piece, Monkey D. Dungeon. He is Dragon's older twin brother, who we have not talked about for the entirety of the story. As you can see, he does look exactly like Dragon, except different by, very small means, and is a completely unique and different character because, get this, he's actually a celestial dragon. If I told you 10 years ago, if you were reading One Piece like I was 10 years ago, wow, it's been 10 years. It's been more than 10 years. It's been almost 15 years. Not the point. If you were reading One Piece as long as I had, and 5, 10 years ago, somebody told you that Shanks had an older twin brother who was a celestial dragon and looked just like him, you would be laughed out of any convention hall. Not since Sabo has a character felt so self-insert fanfiction-y. I don't know if I've ever shared this on the channel, but when I first read One Piece, I actually caught up to the anime with the, I believe it was the subtitles? No, it was the dub that I caught up to Thriller Bark. I ran out of dubbed episodes, so I caught up via subbed to, I think it was Marineford, partway through that. Then I caught up to the manga about the time we had Luffy's flashback. Sabo was kind of a funny character to me, because if it wasn't Oda himself writing this, Sabo sounds like a self-insert fanfiction. Sabo sounds like, this is Luffy and Ace's secret brother that you didn't know about. Oh, why is he not in the story? He died. He died tragically, and that's why Luffy and Ace don't talk about him. But his name, it's Sabo, because that's the S that Ace has crossed out on his shoulder to remember him. See, it was foreshadowed that my OC is there and real. It's funny because Sabo has grown into his own character and is a very interesting character. That being said, we have a very interesting case here where this has happened again. Now, if some of you are following my train of thought, which is a hard one to follow sometimes, you'd also know that this is sort of the similar case for Sanji, where you met Ichiji, Niji, Yonji. It became, a whole thing of siblings who are named after numbers, not letters. So it sort of similar to that scenario. What's funny about Shamrock and Shanks is how much they look the same, and the hijinks that will probably resume due to that. This has been probably my longest intro. Hello, Internet! I am the hero of Julios, once again with another One Piece chapter summary. This week's chapter is chapter 1138, The Harley. Not to be confused with the motorcycle, we're actually talking about some sacred texts, and things get interesting. The artwork this week, however, is not interesting. It is a continuation of Yamato's pilgrimage, and we finally get to see the mysterious owner of the building that looks like Who's Who's face, with the cat-themed minions, and the cat-themed, decor, and the cat-themed leader of the cat-themed base. I would like all of you to know that this is a cat-loving channel. I am a man who loves his cat, my little kitty Mocha. She is about 10 years old now. She is considered elderly by cat standards. So by no means do I have anything against the aesthetic of this character. However, there is nothing mysterious about a mansion that is owned by a man who looks just like the building itself. It's Who's Who. Honestly, the more I thought about it over the course of the week, the more I was really hoping that it actually was like Black Maria or Page One or, Sasaki trying to build this whole thing and then blame it on Who's Who if somebody attacked. But turns out, Who's Who's the ones in charge. So I'm interested to see where this goes, because if this just ends in a beatdown, then this was kind of pointless. It's kind of a pointless pilgrimage, because if Yamato just beats up, and no offense to Jinbei's power, but if Yamato can hold out against Kaido for a few minutes, then Yamato can definitely beat up Who's Who, which Actually, no, this isn't no offense to Jinbei. This is a compliment to Jinbei. The fight against Who's Who did not take long. Jinbei literally allowed that fight to happen so that they could converse. Jinbei one-shotted the dude once he got all the info he needed, once he got all the talking out of him. Also, as soon as he brought up, like, fishman racism and stuff. But let's not get into that. This is the continuation of the pilgrimage. I'm really hoping this leads to something more interesting. So, speaking of more interesting, I got my notes right here. Let's get into the actual chapter itself, which starts with Loki almost dying on the ground because, you know, can't really defend himself against all of Gunko's attacks. And he brings up what we're all thinking. Why do you look like red-haired Shanks? Like, you're the spitting image of him, aside from 3 claw marks across your face and an arm that you have that he does not. So, you want to fill me in on that? And that's when Shamrock tells us Shanks is actually his estranged younger twin brother. So it's I don't have a twin. I'm friends with some twins, but I myself don't have one. Apparently, being the older and younger twin is an important thing in twin culture. I don't get it, because you're born like only a few minutes apart. Is there really like a significant difference there? But yeah, Oda decided to go with the twin route, which makes sense because they're identical twins. But Shamrock goes on to tell us that Shanks did in fact return to the Holy Land once. But it would seem that his younger brother prefers the filth of the world below over the grandeur that is the home of the Celestial Dragons. Which kind of implies that Shanks was given an opportunity to be a Celestial Dragon. Literally the thing that Doflamingo wanted, mind you. That's interesting, though, because in the case of Doflamingo, once you were, you know, gone from the Holy Land, you were no longer considered a Celestial Dragon. So why would Shamrock word it this way? Why would he say that Shanks preferred the land below? Did Shanks get to go to the Holy Land when he was young? Because that doesn't even make sense, because Doflamingo was very young. Hell, he shot his own father and then said, hey, I got rid of him. I got rid of the not Celestial Dragon. Like me. I'm like you. Please. I'm horrible. I'm absolutely horrible of a person. Please let me back in. And they said no. So, is it because he's an emperor? Because as we can see here, they were trying to recruit Loki. So you don't actually have to be a Celestial Dragon by birth to become a Celestial Dragon. We also know that because, what's his name? Stelly. Stelly asked Garp how to become a Celestial Dragon. So it's clearly something that you are able to apply for. Or it's something that can be offered to you. Like, for example, York. I'm actually starting to believe more and more that she can become a Celestial Dragon if we're trying to offer it to people like Loki. So my guess is because Shanks is one of the 4 emperors, that he was granted a chance to accept his godlyhood and become one of the Celestial Dragons, and declined because he'd rather go drinking with his friends. I can't blame him. Loki then goes on to tell Shamrock that it's really funny that the 2 of you happen to be brothers and you also happen to incur my wrath. So as soon as I get out of these chains, I'm coming after your whole bloodline at this point. I might as well figure out who your parents are, because I'll go after them too. And Shamrock just turns back slowly. And he says, you dare to threaten me? And Gunko standing over, she's like, hey, it's not worth it, Shamrock. You know, he's like, I know. I won't bloody my hands, but my sword will. And with a single flick of his wrist and a single command, Shamrock shatters one of my One Piece theories. So, I don't know if I've shared this on the channel either. Oh, it's a big day of sharing for me. I had a theory that Blackbeard was obtaining 3 very powerful devil fruits. One is the strongest Paramecia, which he has. One was the strongest Logia fruit, which he has. The third would be the strongest zone fruit, which you could debate any mythical zone would be more powerful than any other zone, but it would be what this specific zone allows one to do. My theory was that the mythical zone Cerberus would grant you 2 more mental states, 2 more bodies, 2 more souls, 2 more what have you, and allow you to consume 2 additional devil fruits, 1 for each of your heads. This would be the theory that Blackbeard actually ate the Cerberus devil fruit as his first fruit. Then with his second head, he ate the darkness fruit, and with his third head, he ate the Paramecia Gura Gura. This was blown out of the water, though, because apparently Cerberus, the mythical zone of the guardian dog of Hades itself, was eaten by a sword. Shamrock's sword. And Loki's just as shocked as I am, because, man, that's pretty dang cool. So Cerberus, horrible vicious dog, apparently has detachable heads with tongues that turn into swords and are able to fly around like jet propulsioned little rockets. And Shamrock tells him, scatter. And the sword heads scatter around and they're flying around Loki. And Shamrock hops upon a arrow bird that Gunko made. Because, hey, if Doflamingo can use strings to make perfect replicas of himself, and Karasu can turn soot into perfectly flyable, bird crow things, it makes just as much sense that Gunko can, make a flying bird out of arrows. So as the two of them are flying away, Shamrock notes that now subterfuge is going to be a hard thing to do. I'm going to guess because he realized they left some witnesses back at the castle. So now is time to go for a more direct approach. We are going to go after their children, which I got to admit, perfectly villainous thing to do. I would not have done that myself, but I am a better man. So Shamrock says, we're going to need some extra help. Gunko, call in another God's Knight. And she's like, that's fine. Tell me which one. So we got 3 problems on our hands. The God's Knights, I'm gonna guess they're of equal level to a Yonko's commander. So, we're talking king, queen. Although, Shamrock is the commander. So, is this a level of Yonko followed by Yonko commanders kind of thing? Judging by the silhouette we saw with Dragon, there's got to be at least 9 or 10 of them. I don't know if that includes the commander or not. So, that's a lot more than 3. But that's enough for a Straw Hat to take on each one, with Luffy fighting Shamrock. Possibly. So we could be seeing Luffy fights Shamrock, Zoro fights Gunko, Sanji fights whoever's left, whoever this third person is. But that's the last we see of this group for now. We do see the aftermath of the attack, though, as Luffy is defending Shanks' honor. See, the 2 giants who got beat up, they're telling Luffy, yeah, it was red-haired Shanks, all right. We see him all the time. He comes to Elbaf. It's one of his main bases. This is definitely him, and he attacked us with this weird girl. And Luffy's like, that is not true. It cannot be Shanks. It has to be some kind of evil doppelganger or his cousin or something, or a guy that looks like him. And Nami's like, Luffy, you really do put a lot of faith in Shanks, huh? And Luffy's like, of course. I mean, imagine if someone said something about Malamir. And Nami's like, you mean Bellamir. But personally, I think it's really sweet that Luffy even remembers who Bellamir is. Because if you remember correctly, when Nojiko said, hey, you guys want to hear Nami's tragic backstory? Luffy literally said no and went for a walk. So that implies at some point between Arlong Park and where we are now, Nami told Luffy the story, which I think is really sweet. I know we don't get enough crew interaction on boats and stuff, but the fact that Luffy knows who Saul is, the fact that Luffy knows who Bellamir is, it at least implies that at some point in their travels together, Luffy at least asked, because I don't think it's something that Robin would be like, hey Luffy, you want to hear about the horrors that I went through as a kid? No, but I think at some point Luffy was like, hey Robin, who's your best friend? And Robin was like, oh, if it's you, of course, Luffy. No, I mean outside of the crew, but thank you. And Robin would be like, oh, I guess it would have to have been Saul. And Luffy would have been like, well, who's Saul? And then Luffy would have learned Robin's backstory that way. Either that, or all of Robin's backstory actually did happen during Enies Lobby, and you've got the whole CP9 group just like watching her give her backstory to the rest of the crew, which could have happened. I don't know. Flashbacks are kind of weird like that. Like, some flashbacks are a story being told, and some flashbacks are just us, the audience, learning the context. For example, Jinbei's flashback. That was Jinbei telling the story of Fishman Island to Luffy. But Usopp's backstory was literally, oh no, that's a bad example too, because Mary was telling Kaya Usopp's story. Zoro's never told anyone his backstory, so it would make sense that at some point Luffy would be like, so why do you want to be the world's greatest swordsman? Anyways, it was just really nice to hear that Luffy knows his crew's backstories. But as they get on the subject of family, they do ask, well, what if Shanks has a brother or something? And Luffy's just like, no, I don't think Shanks ever mentioned a family. I mean, I know he was born on a pirate ship, so I just kind of assumed the Roger pirates, except Buggy, are his family. It's really funny that Luffy explicitly says except Buggy, when I firmly believe Shanks would not feel that way. He'd be like, oh, Buggy? Yeah, Buggy's like my best friend. We go way back. Even though Buggy loves Shanks too. They're best friends. They gotta be. It only makes sense. But as Luffy is mentioning the idea of Shanks having a family and growing up on the Roger pirate ship, we see the mysterious headed stranger walking towards the very castle that Luffy's in. So my guess is the cliffhanger of next week's chapter is going to be the introduction of Scopper Gaban. I'm putting the money down. It's got to be Scopper. Scopper's the husband of Ripley. Very lucky man. Speaking of of being a blessed man to stand in the presence of Ripley, Frankie and Ripley are actually working on looking around the Atom Tree. Obviously navigating a tree of this size would be difficult for any human, even one as big as Frankie. So he's been walking around with Ripley. Sometimes she's holding him to get him to higher places. We see one panel where she is holding him while they're talking. And other times, he's just walking around. But as they're walking around, Ripley and Frankie are discussing the price of atom wood and the reason why it's so expensive. Apparently, it's a sacred tree. Like, the tree of Elbaf is sacred. Saul even goes as far as telling Frankie, don't you dare chop any of that wood off. So he can't even take some back to repair the Sunny. Now, my guess is after all the shenanigans that happen in Elbaf, after all the craziness, Loki's name is cleared if he's actually a good guy, Haruden becoming the proper king of the giants, the prophecies of the Harley being fulfilled. We'll get to that part in a moment. But after everything, I'm sure the giants will part with some atom wood for Frankie. He's got to have run out of the stuff by now. The Thousand Sunny doesn't take damage a lot, but it still takes damage. And it's going to need some more wood to make it to the end of the Grand Line. But as they're walking around the Atom Tree, Frankie notices there's something etched into the trees. And Ripley explains that, yeah, a long time ago some children, drew on the bark of the atomwood tree, and it's become a sacred site, because it's one of those things where, years and years, the etching still remains. Like when you carve your initials into a tree. This is a little more elaborate than that, but as Frankie's looking at it, he's like, is it really that sacred if it's just a bunch of kids' scribbles? And Ripley tells him, yeah, because given how long ago it was drawn, it's about 800 to 900 years old, which puts this mural in the middle of the Void Century. Frankie then says, oh my gosh, if it's in the Void Century, then we got to show this to Robin. She'll love this. Yes, she will. Because I love it too. Gosh dang it, this is getting crazy. Because while this is happening, while they're looking at this amazing mural, Saul is showing Robin the sacred Harley texts. The sacred Harley texts are an interesting document that has caused much deliberation between the giants. because the Harley texts depict 3 different eras, the third of which has very many similarities to the era of today, which means some of the things in the Harley text are prophetic. They're things that haven't happened yet. The only thing that is a constant is that Nika always shows up and is a boisterous entity that has a heartbeat to a very specific rhythm. It's like dunt dat dat or something. The way it looks. My guess is what we hear when during Overtaken, the One Piece soundtrack. You know, the dun 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 dun. You know, that kind of thing. I think that's what it sounds like. That's kind of what I'm going with until Oda himself pulls out a drum and shows us what it sounds like. The drums of liberation have been heard through these 3 eras. But as the 3 of them, Saul, Chopper, and Robin, are looking at the Harley text, Robin starts to read it out loud. Now, it's a bit of a read, so I'm not going to go into the entirety of the text's wording, but we basically have 3 phases. One, where the Earth God rages at the people for stealing the power of the sun from the core of the world. The second era, the forest god tamed the demons and caused a ripple in the way the world works. Those of the half moon dreamed and those of the full moon fell. It's a very interesting series of texts. And then finally, the third one is the sun god guiding people to a new dawn. The people of the half moon sleep and the inconvenient remnant obtain memories. So throughout all 3 of these eras, there is a similar ending. In the story of the Earth God, the sun and Earth God did not meet. At the end of the story of the Forest God, they did not meet. But at the end of the Sun God and the people of the moon, or the moon children, or however you want to word it, they will meet. Surely they will meet. I don't really know what to do with it. I'm not gonna put the picture of the mural up on here because it's definitely something worth seeing for yourself in the chapter. But it's fascinating. I mean, this could confirm the theory that the One Piece is on the moon. I mean, we actually see in the mural something that looks like the Ark Maxim flying towards the moon and getting like struck by holy fire. There's the Ark that, you know, Noah down at the bottom of Fishman Island. In the third part of the mural, during the final era, we see many depictions of different races, merfolk, giant robots, Nika himself, all fighting against this big horned demonic entity. It's hard to tell how all of this connects right now, but I'm sure someone way smarter than me has already put things together. So I'm looking forward to reading about that. And honestly, I feel like for once I might actually have the gears spinning in my own head. I'm going to take some other opinions, I'm going to put them with my own, and maybe I'll come up with my own theory video. So let me know in the comments below what you think of this mural, because this is one of the biggest lore drops in One Piece. And I don't think for certain that Luffy is some child of prophecy and everything's happening because of Luffy's specialness. I think it's kind of the opposite. Luffy isn't special because a prophecy told him he's special. Luffy is special because he's going to do what no one else can. And he's not even intending to. The man who lives most free is the Pirate King, and would kind of defeat the purpose of freedom if he was bound by the prophecy. But hey, that's just one man's theory. Let me know in the comments below what you think. I'd love to hear some more opinions on this. Thank you for watching as always, and I will see you in the next video. This is the Hero of Julios, Xing out.